Hello, my lovely students. I hope you all are doing great and you all are excited to learn about multimodality, which is our today's lessons topic. In this video, we'll talk about different modes of communication and how they connect to multimodality in order to get ourselves prepared for our final major project. Anyway, congratulations, you are almost done. This is your last major project. Good job. All right. We already got to know that our last project is going to be a multimodal project, and we also got to be introduced to the assignment prompt in our last class. So for this project, you are going to take the research project that you did for your third major project. But now, this time you'll address an audience who really needs to hear about your project through the modes that are appropriate for that audience. So this new targeted group of audience can be different than the audience that you targeted for your research project, third major project. Again, can be the same. It's really up to you as long as it serves your purpose. Now let's talk about modes of communication. We'll use a nice analogy to understand the topic very clearly. All right, think about this question here. Think about modes of transportation. Suppose you have to get to the Indianapolis airport from Ball State University campus. How will you get there? What modes of transportation will you take and why? I want you to pause this video for a minute and think about different options that you can go for. Well, the obvious answer might be hopping your car and drive there. Let's say you have the luxury of a car and you can also afford gas and parking. You can afford gas to get there and you can afford parking too. So it might take you around an hour and 20 minutes to reach there from our campus, right? It's really convenient given you have all the privileges. Now, let's say you don't have your own car, but someone is willing to give you a ride. This is much better, isn't it? Since you don't have to worry about parking or gas. Now, if you don't have a car of your own and you also fail to manage a ride, what might be the alternatives? You might have to take an Uber or look for some public transportation, which are not that convenient in comparison to the previous two. But imagine if you have to walk. That's not really an ideal situation at all, though walking is also a mode of transportation. Let's see in our Google map how long it will take us to get to the airport by walking. Ta-da! Around 22 hours. Terrible, right? Yes, it is. So what we are getting from this conversation, that there can be different options, different modes of transportations. Some are better than others. And the same is true for modes of communication as well. Anyway, I want you to think of some other alternatives for this purpose and let me know of them by commenting on the discussion board we created for this lecture. Anyway, so when you are talking about communication, remember there are different modes that you can rely on to convey your message or to communicate. It's really important to understand which modes which modes are best suited for certain communication purposes. As you know, some modes can be used but might not turn out successful or ideal if we remember the example of walking to Indianapolis Airport from Ball State campus. There are 5 modes of communication identified by scholars. They are linguistic, visual, oral, gestural, and spatial. Linguistic refers to the spoken or written language that we used to refer to text before coming to this class. You remember in our first class, most of us told that text means that we write or speak, but later we learned text can be anything that means something or conveys a meaning. Anyway, linguistic mode refers to the written and spoken language. Visual refers to images, photographs, pictures, what we can see. Oral refers to sound, music, sound effects, what we can hear or can be perceived by our auditory organ. Gestural refers to movement. When we talk, we do hand gestures, right? It's not always purposeful, but they're always there. And again, sometimes they can be super purposeful. Last but not the least, spatial. It sounds a bit abstract since it refers to the organizational relationship. You know what? I can often identify people in a classroom who are close friends by, based on the way they sit near each other. Sometimes it's more obvious. Even on layout or design, you organize information accessible to logical relationship or primacy. So we communicate importance through spatial organization. So these are the 5 modes of communication. Now get back to the term multimodality. When we talk about multimodality, we are talking about multiple modes. Use multiple modes to best communicate your message if needed. Of course, you can use them in isolation, and again, some of them together according to the way it better serves your purposes. But in a multimodal project, you have to use multiple modes together. And of course, not anonymously, not randomly, rather by evaluating the best modes that will serve your purpose. We'll talk a lot in details about how you can develop your multimodal project, how you can combine different modes, examples. We'll talk about some samples in our next lecture video. So briefly, by now we know a multimodal text can be should be something which combines different modes. So it can be a flyer, an advertisement, an infographic, a podcast, a short video, a video, etc. So anyway, here's another thing that we always get confused with. People often use the terms multimodality and multimedia interchangeably. They are not really the same. Multimodality refers to the composition process. How we use different modes to create a multimodal text, that process. For example, in a newspaper, you may find articles combined with images and written text. So visual and linguistic modes of communication have been used in that composition process to communicate with the audience. On the other hand, multimedia refers to the end product and the means of delivery we use there. So newspaper itself is also a multimedia. Radio, televisions are also instances of multimedia, since you are sharing your multimodal text through those means of media. We often use a lot of different delivery modes to communicate. In television, you can find oral, visual, linguistic, gestural modes while watching a program, right? In radio, on the other hand, you will find oral and linguistic modes of communication mostly. So the composition process of, suppose any talk shows in radio can be a multimodal text, where radio itself is a multimedia. Think about flyers now. You can find the spatial organization, written language, and visuals on a flyer. So the flyer is a multimodal text, but if you then the way you deliver that to your audience is through multimedia. So if you have an advertisement on television is a multimedia. So we can clearly now see the distinction between multimodality and multimedia. And since now you know at least have some primary knowledge about how a multimodal text should look like, I want you all to jump in on the discussion board and do some planning. Share what you might do for your project, which modes might be best suited for your project according to your audience, purpose, and rhetorical situation. A complete guide has also been added with more clear instructions in the discussion board, so refer back to that as always. see what your peers are planning to do, give suggestions if you have any, appreciate their ideas if you find anything interesting, and feel free to adapt their ideas as well. As you know, learning happens through sharing. I'm really excited to see your projects. So if you have any questions about this whole lecture video or anything, feel free to put your question in the discussion board. And thank you so much. That's all for today. I am